Got it.
So as Don may already have mentioned, BricsCAD BIM does not have all the features that Revit has. Also does not have all the features that ArchiCAD has or other BIM software. That's why it's very hard to convert existing Revit users to BricsCAD BIM. And that's also not necessarily the goal when you engage a client about BricsCAD BIM. However, we have noticed that the people we do talk to about BricsCAD BIM, even though they are avid Revit users, they're still very interested in the workflow that we offer. Even though it may not be for this year, maybe they might have to think about converting over a couple of years or have BricsCAD BIM as a complementing software with their Revit licenses. But generally, it's very positively received, and it's mainly because of our unique approach. So one of the unique things about BricsCAD BIM is that we offer direct modeling capabilities and allow the result of the direct modeling process to be used in the rest of the BIM process. So for instance, like you saw me change or create this this bench model earlier in the pro demo, it's also possible to create shapes for buildings. For instance, here I'm just sculpting my way to something that might resemble a building at one point. Again, using the direct modeling tools and using the quad. Something I forgot to mention during the light demo, and that's maybe good to know. I mean, it's fairly obvious, but if a user tries a trial license and they start using it for 2D drafting, and they don't know how to get rid of the quad because they're not used to it, you can just click this little cross icon. It's also important to mention this to your customer when you're giving them a sort of introduction demo or call, as it is one of the first things that they will notice when they're trying it for themselves, and if they don't know how to get rid of it, they will get frustrated and they might just quit. So just having them realize that it's optional, the quad. It is recommended, of course, but it's optional. It's very important to know. Okay, so I made this shape of a building. I'm going to shell it now. Actually, I'm in the modeling workspace. I will just switch to the BIM workspace, where I'm personally just more familiar. And I will shell this building so it's hollow. And now, for instance, we can create a window here. But so far what I'm doing is, again, just conceptual modeling. I'm not really defining any information or anything. I'm not defining families like you would in Revit. It's still conceptual modeling, which in this case I did using 3D direct modeling. It's also possible to create a layout for a building in 3D using or starting from a 2D layout. So in this case, we have some 2D geometry. And I can use a quick draw tool to easily create walls and slabs based on this 2D geometry. Sorry if there is some delay here. It seems like GoToWebinar and Quick Draw don't play together nicely on my machine. But basically, creating walls and slabs based on a 2D layout. And the interesting thing about this quick draw tool is that you can use it in combination with direct modeling tools. I'm just going to create a roof here as well. It can be used in combination with direct modeling tools. So even though this is now a very rectilinear layout, I can still use tools like the manipulator to rotate this roof, for instance. Now, again, I'm still working with geometry, with conceptual design. Once I'm ready for the next step, I can turn this into a BIM model, or at least the start of a BIM model. Now, the way you would generally do this is you would select an object, let's say, for instance, this object here and this, and we would define these as roof objects. So I'm going to say, okay, classify as a roof. And you will now see in the structure browser that I have 2 roofs, and all the rest of my model is just 3D solids and block references. Don mentioned the Bimify workflow earlier. I will show you what it does now. Basically, it will classify objects for us, solids and block references. It will recognize structural and MEP profiles. It will find spatial information in our model and define it. Define some spatial objects, and so on. I generally recommend showing this process live because it's very powerful. Doesn't really matter on which model you use. This is now a very simple model. Of course, I encourage you to use more complex model or more aesthetically pleasing models, especially if you're talking to an architecture company. They will not like seeing this Lego block building here. There's plenty of models out there. For example, the model that we used from HOK that we used for the summit last year. It's all available to be used for demos. Basically, what Bimify now did is classified these objects here as slabs, stairs, walls, and windows. Maybe isolate the walls so you can see it more clearly. And it also created these section planes. Now, what it didn't do is it didn't define materials to my objects. This is something Bimify cannot do without human interaction, of course. So you will see when I zoom into my objects that they don't have any materials applied to it. That can be solved fairly easily. I can simply drag and drop materials onto my objects like I did here. And in fact, I'm going to use the structure browser to do it a bit faster. For instance, the interior walls here, or the exterior walls. So using Bimify and these compositions, you can already get quite far, starting from just a simple conceptual design. But of course, if you want to increase LOD, for example, here you can see this wall slab connection. This is not correct, obviously. We give the user the ability to create any kind of detail, any kind of connection using direct modeling again. We do love our direct modeling here at BricsCAD. And basically it gives you the ability to, let's say, push-pull this slab here till the distance I want. Same goes for these splice here. And what I'm doing now basically is I'm creating this detail over the length of this one wall. Again, also in Fill 3D. So if I isolate the slab, you will see it's done in Fill 3D, which is of course important for your quantity takeoffs, for your volume of concrete, your area of tiling, and so on. But basically, I want to now copy this connection to the rest of my model, because if I take a look at my other locations, this is not correct yet. And that's where propagate comes in. This is now a very simple example of propagate. But propagate is a very generic tool and can be used for all kinds of purposes. In this case, I will just use it to copy this connection. So it will scan the model where it can apply this connection again. And every possible location is shown with a green check mark, which I can then choose to enable or disable. So Once you've made your details and you've come to a level of development that's satisfactory, you obviously also want to create documentation from this, which is also a part of the workflow that I would definitely highlight during a presentation. For this, I'm going to use a slightly different model where we have actually two buildings in one project. And I'm going to take this small building here as an example of how to create floor plans and sections. So I'll just open the building here. I'm going to create some floor plan section planes using Bimify. So for example, this one here. And now I want to assign this floor plan section plane to a 2D sheet as a 2D drawing. So I'm going to my sheet set setup. I'm not going to go into detail here. Depending on how much time you have here for your presentation, you can go in with detail here as well, but I'm going to keep it fairly high level here and just click Create Sheets and show you what a sheet looks like. So for now, this creates an empty placeholder viewport on the sheet. And by updating it, I will see a 2D drawing being generated of this floor plan. Obviously, this 2D drawing is linked to the 3D model, so if you make changes to your model, these will also be updated here. And also the information that is queried from the model, for instance, these well types here, these tags, or these room tags are also queried from the model. So if you make a change in your, let's say, the space name, this multileader will also be updated, obviously. Of course, the BIM product has way more to offer. It's very hard to convey this in a 10-minute presentation. But if you want to give a bit of an overview of how exactly we handle this kind of process, I think these are the steps you need to go through. So modeling, Bimify, propagate, and creating documentation are 4 core parts of this process. But obviously, you can also refer to things like the Grasshopper connection, connection with Twinmotion and Enscape for rendering, all these kinds of features as well. But again, depends on how much time you have and depends on what your prospect is after, of course. With that, I'm going to hand it back to